Welcome, 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 everybody. It is so great to see each and every one of you here. It is 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, or whatever time it happens to be where you are because you are watching us right now. It is time for Outwitting the Devil. This is a book by Napoleon Hill, but also today we are featuring a very special guest in Dana Scranton. Dana is a very learned man. He has studied at University of Wyoming, Northwest College, Stanford University. And the beautiful thing is that Dana works at making a difference in teaching people how to create an entrepreneurial lifestyle of fun, profit, freedom, and impact. And as I had said in the previous chapter's announcement, I love this, Dana. I love your quote, what you share with us here about what you love to do. He says, "My purpose in life is to help people create an authentic life of freedom of their choosing and on their own terms." So let's get started with Outwitting the Devil. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for Mr. Dana Scranton.
Muted here. Well, thank you, Craig. That's wonderful. I hope all your weather is as good as ours. We have a light snow, and that's just perfect. And by the way, one of the guys that I know that's probably about 30 miles south of us saw a robin yesterday. That's weird. So, all right. Well, let's get started. We're going to be going into episode 3 now of Outwitting the Devil. The first episode was just an introductory, talking about what we were going to try to accomplish, what we're going to do. The last episode was the first half of the chapter that you see in your book, but in the audiobook, if you have acquired that, it was chapter 1. So what I'm doing is I'm calling today's session chapter 1B because it is still in chapter 1 of the book. So I don't know how many of you actually purchased the book, but it's got some interesting things we'll talk about when we get to the end. So without further ado, we'll just start. And I think, Robert, you probably have it queued up. It should be chapter 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Well, we're just going to rock and roll on this thing.
Okay.
So let me share.
Chapter 2. A new world is revealed to me. Obviously, I had undergone a new birth by which I had been separated from all forms of fear. I now had courage such as I never before had experienced. Despite the fact that I had not as yet been shown how, or from what source, I would be able to secure the necessary funds which I was seeking, I had such absolute faith that the money would be forthcoming that I could see it already in my possession. On but few occasions in my entire life have I experienced such faith. It was a feeling which one person cannot describe to another. There are no words in the English language suitable for such a description, a fact that all who have had similar experiences can easily verify. I proceeded immediately to carry out the instructions I had received. All feeling that I had embarked upon an impossible mission had now left me. One by one, I began to call into my mind the names of all my acquaintances I knew to be financially able to supply me with the $25,000 which I needed, starting with the name of Henry Ford and going over the entire list of more than 300 people. My other self plainly said, "Keep on searching." The darkest hour is just before dawn. But I had come to the end of my rope. My entire list of acquaintances had been exhausted, and with it my physical endurance as well. I had been at work, concentrating my mind upon that list of names for the better part of 2 days and nights, having stopped only long enough to sleep for a few hours. I leaned back in my chair, shut my eyes, and went into a sort of doze for a few minutes. I was aroused by what seemed to be an explosion in the room. As I regained consciousness, the name of Albert L. Pelton came into my mind, and with it a plan which I knew instantly to be the plan through which I would succeed in getting Mr. Pelton to publish my books. I remembered Mr. Pelton only as an advertiser in the Golden Rule magazine, which I had formerly published.
Hill's subconscious mind identified an acquaintance, remembered only as an advertiser in Hill's magazine, as a potential source of funding. You make an impression on everyone you meet, just as everyone you meet makes an impression on you. You never know when an acquaintance may become a business associate. There is great power in your network.
I sent for a typewriter, addressed a letter to Mr. Pelton at Meriden, Connecticut, and described the plan just as it had been handed over to me. He answered by telegram, saying that he would be in Philadelphia to see me the following day. When he came, I showed him the original manuscripts of my philosophy, and briefly explained what I believed its mission to be. He turned through the pages of the manuscripts for a few minutes, then stopped suddenly and fixed his eyes on the wall for a few seconds and said, "I will publish your books for you." The contract was drawn, a substantial advance payment on royalties was given me, the manuscripts were turned over to him, and he took them back to Meriden. I did not ask him at the time what caused him to reach a decision to publish my books before he had read the manuscripts, but I do know that he supplied the necessary capital, printed the books, and assisted me in selling many thousands of sets of them to his own clientele of book buyers who were located in practically every English-speaking country in the world. My other self makes good. 3 months from the day that Mr. Pelton called on me in Philadelphia, a completed set of my books was placed on the table in front of me, and my income from the sale of the books began to run high enough for all my needs. These books are now in the hands of my students all over the world. My first royalty check from the sale of my books was for $850. As I opened the envelope in which it came, my other self said, "Your only limitation is the one which you set up in your own mind."
Your only limitation is the one which you set up in your own mind. Does this statement ring as true for you as it does for me? So many times I have been my own worst enemy and needlessly held myself back through a lack of self-confidence. Hill wants us all to discover our other self so we can each reach our maximum potential.
I'm not sure that I understand just what this other self is, but I do know that there can be no permanent defeat for the man or the woman who discovers it and relies upon it. The day after Mr. Pelton came to see me in Philadelphia, my other self presented me with an idea which solved my immediate financial problem. The idea flashed into my mind that automobile merchandising methods had to undergo a drastic change, and that future salesmen in this field would have to learn to sell automobiles instead of merely serving as buyers of used car trade-ins, as most of them were doing at the time. It also occurred to me that young men who had just finished college and who, therefore, knew nothing of the old tricks of automobile merchandising would be the material out of which this new brand of salesman could best be developed. The idea was so distinct and impressive that I immediately called the sales manager of the General Motors Company on long-distance telephone and briefly explained my plan to him. He too was impressed by it and referred me to the West Philadelphia branch of the Buick Automobile Company, which was then owned and managed by Earl Powell. I went to see Mr. Powell, explained my plan to him, and he retained me at once to train 15 carefully selected young college men through whom the plan was put into operation. My income from that retainer was more than enough to take care of all of my expenses for the following 3 months until the returns from the sale of my books began to come in, including the cost of that expensive suite of rooms over which I had at first been so concerned. My other self had not disappointed me. The money I needed was in my hands at the proper time, just as I had been assured the money would be. By this time, I had been convinced that my trip to Philadelphia was by no means a fool's mission, as my reason had indicated it would be before I left West Virginia. From that time right up to this very minute, everything I have needed has come to me, and this despite the fact that the whole world has recently passed through a period of economic depression, when the bare necessities of life have not always been available to all people. Sometimes the arrival of the material things I needed has been a little late, but I can truthfully say that my other self has always met me at the crossroads when I have come to them and indicated which path I should follow. The other self follows no precedents, recognizes no limitations, and always finds a way to accomplish desired ends. It may meet with temporary defeat, but not with permanent failure. I am as sure of the soundness of this statement as I am of the fact of being engaged in writing these lines.
The other self may meet with temporary defeat, but not with permanent failure. How many times do we allow a temporary defeat to affect us as if it were a permanent failure, instead of learning from it and moving on? As Hill describes, he himself faced many setbacks along his journey, but each time he was able to find the seed of greater benefit and move on to greater successes.
Meanwhile, I earnestly hope that some of the millions of men and women who have been wounded by the business depression and other unpleasant experiences will discover within themselves this strange entity which I have called my other self, and that the discovery will lead them, as it has led me, into a closer relationship with that source of power which surmounts obstacles and masters difficulties instead of being mastered by them. There is a great power to be discovered in your other self. Search sincerely, and you will find it.
Hill's work was published during the Great Depression, and indeed helped millions of people find hope and courage to live in faith that they would find their own paths to success. I believe we can find many parallels between his time and our own. It is during periods of great stress that we find our will and our inner strength. With the current economic uncertainties, people are choosing or being forced to find new paths to provide for themselves and their families, and many will find great success. They will be the great stories of success we will be reading about in a few years from now. Will you be among those success stories, or still watching from the sidelines?
Failure, a blessing in disguise. I have made another discovery as the result of this introduction to my other self, namely, that there is a solution for every legitimate problem, no matter how difficult the problem may seem.
There is a solution for every legitimate problem, no matter how difficult the problem may seem. While this concept may be difficult to acknowledge when you're in the midst of the storm, hindsight generally proves it true.
I have also discovered that there comes with every experience of temporary defeat and every failure and every form of adversity the seed of an equivalent benefit. Mind you, I did not say the full-blown flower of success, but the seed from which that flower may be made to germinate and grow. I know of no exception to this rule. The seed of which I speak may not always be observed, but you may be sure it is there in one form or another. I do not pretend to understand all about this strange force which reduced me to poverty and want, and filled me with fear, and then gave me a new birth of faith, through which I have been privileged to extend help to tens of thousands who found themselves slipping. But I do know that such a force has come into my life, and that I am doing all I can to place others in communication with it. During my quarter-century of research into the causes of success and failure, I have discovered many principles of truth which have been helpful to me and to others, but nothing I have observed has impressed me more than the discovery that every great leader of the past, whose record I have examined, was beset by difficulties and met with temporary defeat before arriving.
Every great leader of the past, whose record I have examined, was beset by difficulties and met with temporary defeat before arriving. Failure and temporary defeat are part of the journey to finding true success.
From Christ on down to Edison, the men who have achieved most have been those who have met with the most stubborn forms of temporary defeat. This would seem to justify the conclusion that infinite intelligence has a plan or a law by which it hurdles men over many obstacles before giving them the privilege of leadership or the opportunity to render useful service in a noteworthy fashion. I would not wish to be again subjected to the experiences through which I passed during that fateful Christmas Eve in 1923, and since, on that eventful evening when I walked around the schoolhouse in West Virginia and fought that terrible battle with fear, but all the wealth in the world would not induce me to divest myself of the knowledge I have gained from those experiences. Faith has a new meaning to me. I repeat that I do not know exactly what this other self is, but I do know enough about it to lean upon it in a spirit of absolute faith in times of difficulty, when the ordinary reasoning faculty of my mind seems to be inadequate for my needs. The economic depression which started in 1929 brought misery to millions of people, but let us not forget that the experience also brought many blessings, not the least of these being the knowledge that there is something infinitely worse than being forced to work. It is being forced not to work. In the main, that depression was more of a blessing than it was a curse. if analyzed in the light of the changes it brought to the minds of those who were wounded by it. The same is true of every experience which changes men's habits and forces them to turn to the great within for the solution of their problems.
There is something infinitely worse than being forced to work. It is being forced not to work. In the main, that depression was more of a blessing than it was a curse, if analyzed in the light of the changes it brought. Is Hill being harsh here, or is he looking beyond the immediate cause and effect of economic disaster to the underlying spiritual result that comes from a true crisis? Can our present economic travails be more of a blessing than a curse? Can economic hardship, such as the loss of a job, be a blessing in disguise? Perhaps yes, if the result is the awakening of an entrepreneurial spirit and the creation of a new business.
The time which I spent in seclusion in West Virginia was, by great odds, the most severe punishment of my life, but the experience brought blessings in the form of needed knowledge which more than offset the suffering which it cost me. These two results, the suffering and the knowledge gained from it, were inevitable. The law of compensation, which Emerson so clearly defined, made this result both natural and necessary.
Ralph Waldo Emerson, 1803-1882, explained the law of compensation in very clear terms. For everything you have missed, you have gained something else, and for everything you gain, you lose something else. In his journal dated January 8, 1826, he also wrote, "The whole of what we know is a system of compensations. Every defect in one manner is made up in another. Every suffering is rewarded, every sacrifice is made up, every debt is paid."
What the future may hold for me in the way of disappointment through temporary defeat, I, of course, have no way of knowing. I do know, however, that no experience of the future can possibly wound me as deeply as have some of those of the past, because I am now on speaking terms at least with my other self. Since this other self took charge of me, I have come by useful knowledge, which I am sure I never would have discovered while my old fear entity was on the throne. For one thing, I have learned that those who meet with difficulties which seem insurmountable may, if they will do so, best overcome these difficulties by forgetting them for a time and helping others who have greater problems. The value of giving before trying to get. I am sure that no effort which we extend to those who are in distress can go without some form of adequate reward. Not always does the reward come from those to whom the service is rendered, but it will come from one source or another. I seriously doubt that any man can avail himself of the benefits of his other self as long as he is steeped in greed and avarice, envy and fear. But if I am wrong in this conclusion, then I still have the unusual honor of being one who has found peace of mind and happiness through a viewpoint that was not sound. I would prefer being thus wrong and happy to being right and unhappy. But this viewpoint is not wrong. As long as I remain on good terms with my other self, I shall be able to acquire every material thing that I need. Moreover, I shall be able to find happiness and peace of mind. What more could anyone else accomplish? The sole motive which inspired me to write this book was a sincere desire to be helpful to others by sharing with them as much as they may be prepared to accept of the stupendous fortune which became mine the moment I discovered my other self. This fortune, happily, is one that cannot be measured in material or financial terms alone, because it is greater than everything which such things represent. Material and financial fortunes, when reduced to their most liquid terms, are measurable in terms of bank balances. Bank balances are no stronger than banks. This other fortune of which I speak is measurable, not only in terms of peace of mind and contentment, but as manifested in those adept at prayer. My other self has taught me to concentrate upon my purpose and to forget about the plan by which it is to be attained when I go to prayer. I am not suggesting that material objects may be acquired without plans. What I am saying is that the power which translates one's thoughts or desires into realities has its source in an infinite intelligence which knows more about plans than the one doing the praying. Stating the case in another way, may it not be wise, when praying, to trust to the universal mind to hand over the plan best suited for the attainment of the object of that prayer? My experience with prayer has taught me that so often all which results from prayer is a plan, if the prayer is answered at all, a plan that is suited for the attainment of the object of the prayer through natural and material media. The plan must be transmuted through self-effort action. I know nothing about any form of prayer which can be induced to work favorably in a mind that is colored, in the slightest degree, by fear.
Is prayer a part of your life? Do you trust God to hand over the plan best suited for the attainment of the object of your prayer? Do you acknowledge that in order for your plan to be successful, you must take action?
A new way to pray. Since becoming better acquainted with my other self, my way of praying is different from what it was before. I used to go to prayer only when facing difficulty. Now I go to prayer before difficulty overtakes me when possible. I now pray not for more of this world's goods and greater blessings, but to be worthy of that which I already have. I find that this plan is better than the old one. Infinite intelligence seems not at all offended when I give thanks and show that I am grateful for the blessings which have crowned my efforts. I was astounded when I first tried this plan of offering a prayer of thanks for what I already possessed, to discover what a vast fortune I had owned without being appreciative of it. For example, I discovered that I possessed a sound body which had never been seriously damaged by illness. I had a mind which was reasonably well balanced. I had a creative imagination through which I could render useful service to great numbers of people. I was blessed with all the freedom I desired, in both body and mind. I possessed an imperishable desire to help others who were less fortunate. I discovered that happiness, the highest aim of mankind, was mine for the taking, business depression or no business depression. Last, but by no means least, I discovered that I had the privilege of approaching infinite intelligence, either for the purpose of offering thanks for what I already possessed, or to ask for more, and for guidance. It may be helpful for every listener of this audiobook to take inventory of his or her intangible assets. Such an inventory may disclose possessions of priceless value.
May we all make an inventory of our blessings in life and give thanks for every gift that we have been given. I know that when I am at a low point in my life, I force myself to think of my family and friends and the blessings they have brought to my life. It is the quickest path up and puts my temporary setbacks into perspective.
Some signs we have overlooked. The whole world is undergoing a change of such stupendous proportions that millions of people have become panic-stricken with worry, doubt, indecision, and fear. It seems to me that now is a splendid time for those who have come to the crossroads of doubt to endeavor to become acquainted with their other selves. All who wish to do so will find it helpful if they take a lesson from nature. Observation will show that the eternal stars shine nightly in their accustomed places, that the sun continues to send down its rays of warmth, causing Mother Earth to yield an overabundance of food and clothing, that water continues to flow downhill, that the birds of the air and the wild animals of the forest receive their accustomed requirements of food, that useful day follows restful night, that busy summer follows the inactive winter, that the seasons come and go precisely as they did before the 1929 Depression began, that, in reality, only men's minds have ceased to function normally, and this because men have filled their minds with fear. Observation of these simple facts of everyday life may be helpful as a starting point for those who wish to supplant fear by faith. I am not a prophet, but I can, with all due modesty, predict that every individual has the power to change his or her material or financial status by first changing the nature of his or her beliefs. Do not confuse the word belief with the word wish. The two are not the same. Everyone is capable of wishing for financial, material, or spiritual advantages, but the element of faith is the only sure power by which a wish may be translated into a belief, and a belief into reality. And right here is an appropriate place at which to call attention to a real benefit which anyone may experience by deliberately using faith in focusing attention upon any form of constructive desire. The mind acts upon one's dominating or most pronounced desires. There is no escape from this fact. It is a fact indeed. Be careful what you set your heart upon, for it surely shall be yours.
Every individual has the power to change his or her material or financial status by first changing the nature of his or her beliefs. It was right after publication of Think and Grow Rich in 1937 that Napoleon Hill began this manuscript for Outwitting the Devil. Through his interview with the devil, Hill discovers and reveals how the devil may be having his way with you and how you can ignite your other self to not only conquer the devil in your own life, but to also empower your other self to achieve your greatest success. Throughout his work is a recurring theme of the importance of transforming your thoughts from fear to faith.
Faith is the beginning of all great achievement. If Edison had stopped by merely wishing for the secret with which electric energy might be harnessed and made to serve through the incandescent lamp, that convenience to civilization would have remained among nature's multifarious secrets. He met with temporary defeat more than 10,000 times before wresting this secret from nature. It was finally yielded up to him because he believed it would be, and he kept on trying until he had the answer. Edison uncovered more of nature's secrets. They might have been called miracles at an earlier period in the realm of physics than did any other man who ever lived, and this because he became acquainted with his other self. I have his own word for this, but even if I did not have it, his achievements of themselves have disclosed the secret in their unfoldment. Nothing within reason is impossible to the man who knows and relies upon his other self. Whatever man believes to be true has a way of becoming true. A prayer is a released thought, sometimes expressed in audible words, and at other times expressed silently. I have observed by experience that a silent prayer is as efficacious as the one which is expressed in words. I have observed also that one state of mind is the determining factor when prayer works, as well as when it does not. My conception of the other self, which I have tried to describe, is that it merely symbolizes a newly discovered approach to infinite intelligence, an approach which one may control and direct through the simple process of mixing faith with one's thoughts. This is only another way of saying that I now have greater faith in the power of prayer. The state of mind known as faith apparently opens to one the medium of a sixth sense through which one may communicate with sources of power and information far surpassing any available through the 5 physical senses. There comes to your aid, and to do your bidding, with the development of the sixth sense, a strange power which, let us assume, is a guardian angel who can open to you at all times the door to the temple of wisdom. The sixth sense comes as near to being a miracle as anything I have ever experienced, and it appears so, perhaps because I do not understand the method by which this principle is operated. This much I do know, that there is a power, or a first cause, or an intelligence which permeates every atom of matter and embraces every unit of energy perceptible to man. That this infinite intelligence converts acorns into oak trees, causes water to flow downhill in response to the law of gravity, follows night with day and winter with summer, each maintaining its proper place and relationship to the other. This intelligence may aid in transmuting one's desires into concrete or material form. I have this knowledge because I have experimented with it and have experienced it. I have for many years followed the habit of taking personal inventory of myself once a year for the purpose of determining how many of my weaknesses I have bridged or eliminated, and to ascertain what progress, if any, I had made during the year.
This section on faith is worth listening to a few times because it contains Hill's core teachings on prayer. Faith, in his view, is a sixth sense, or spiritual power that enables one to succeed if one is in step with the first cause of all things. One of his descriptions of God. His is a practical or scientific faith that emphasizes tangible results. In the book 3 Feet from Gold, my co-author and I discussed the personal success equation that clearly reveals the importance of faith. Your personal success equation, combining your passion with your talent and then seeking the right association and taking the right action, are very important components for your success. But it is when you combine all those components with a strong faith in yourself and your mission that you truly have your personal success equation.
Mute. There we go. Okay,
Robert,
that
can
should be
you
the end of
stop sharing
chapter
your
2.
screen, please?
That is Dana's.
Oh, is that Dana's that's sharing? Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So do you have that up on the screen?
Yes, we see your screen.
Okay. So chapter 1B. Okay. Let
Well,
me
we do
just
not see that if you have a slide yet.
Okay, hold on. Let me get past the technological
Yeah,
inhibit here.
you're showing your entire desktop right now.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay,
well that's a
there.
mess. Okay. Let's see if I can pull this up. That should be,
Got it.
there it is.
We have a winner.
Chicken dinner.
We watched him in live time use the other self.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, got to take that other self out for a burger. Okay, so let's march forward on a few things here. I just need to hit that and then we'll go. Okay, so can continue to share. Okay, can you still see that slide? I got a
We
weird
see
message.
2 slides right now.
Yeah, now we see your slides and the slides coming. So
Okay.
I
It
think
was
if
Well,
you
correct
click
the
on
first way.
we're just gonna go with that.
Very
yeah,
good.
because you had it before when you had the show navigator. You can click it and
Well, I tell you what, let me just try this one more time. This is fun sometimes.
absolutely.
You know, it's just let's see if it's gonna be
Temperamental.
there we
Okay, we
go.
got the full screen right there.
You got it.
Okay. Yeah, all right. So we'll just I'm gonna have to do a little something here.
Yeah, I
You know,
think if you just click on that slide, it'll go to the next slide when you're ready to
yeah,
go.
I needed to get rid of the little box.
There you go.
Okay.
We see the
So,
second slide.
just to remind everybody our purpose here with the mastermind, I'm not going to go through all of this, but the object here is to come here with your goals, your objectives, your definite purpose. Have that in your mind so that your energy is present, so the rest of the group thinking the same way will get the very greatest benefit from our time together. So this is basically the same slide that we showed last time, so I won't spend any more time on that. And we'll just go. So the questions, after going through that, I had a few questions. Did you notice that Hill's idea of what the other self was, even though he said he didn't know what it was, he kept advocating that it was growing, that it was something different each time, that he was getting more in touch with it and coming to the point where he could appreciate more what it is and what it does for him. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Yeah. The other self, this question, you can figure this out, but what are some of the characteristics of the other self? How does it come to him? How does he use it? That's something to pursue. The law of compensation, that probably is one of the most powerful lessons in this particular chapter that was outlined by Sharon Lecter. But what's interesting about that is what you give does not necessarily come back to you in the same kind that you gave, right? So if you give, what you receive may be something totally different at a different time in a different form. But as Napoleon Hill says, when you give, the reward will come. And that's a key. And I think in society today, we're kind of missing that. So that's one of the reasons it's important to create that authentic life of freedom so you can actually go out there and practice that. Now, the fearful thoughts, what is the real danger of harboring fearful thoughts? He says it only one time specifically, and then he alludes to it other times. But what it is that fearful thought disconnects you from your other self. Your mind is so preoccupied with negative energy that it's missing the information, it's missing the communication. So that was a kind of an epiphany because I think every day a fearful thought enters your mind, the trick, I guess, and all of us fight this, I know I do, is how do you identify what a fearful thought is before it actually turns into a thought? Ponder that. You know, Hill defines prayer in a kind of an interesting way. You know, it's a way to ask, it's a way to receive, it's a way to communicate, and it can be silent, it can be vocal, but it is something where you have to know your purpose, your vision, and be in a state of mind of faith. And without those, he advocates that it doesn't work. Now, lastly, and I think that's the last one. Yeah, not quite. Intelligence, the infinite intelligence and the other self. You know, you hear in the modern world of manifestation that if you think it, it will happen. But oftentimes the gurus who share that don't share with you that it doesn't just show up on your doorstep. You know, and I know many people get frustrated at that. They take all these courses on manifestation and then nothing happens. Well, no, it was happening. The key is it doesn't come in physical form. You have to make it happen. And I think Napoleon made that very clear. You know, you will be given the direction, but you have to put action behind the direction to make it happen. The thing is you may not have ever known what to do next had that direction not been given to you. So that's the catalyst. And I think that's one of the very important aspects of this chapter. Now, we talked about last time what faith and fear is, but you know, fear is a lack of faith, if you want to
Yeah.
look at it that way. But faith, in Napoleon Hill's terms, is a collage of confidence, persistence, belief, and trust. You know, he outlined his life, everything in this chapter 1 and 2 that he described was a journey through hell. You know, he had to figure out what faith was, and he outlined it very strongly that faith has multiple components, but it has to be present and it has to be strong in order for everything to work. So that's something to work on. It's put that in your mind and keep thinking about it. When you read the book, keep asking yourself, what is faith? Because it's answered a number of times. Okay, well, that was cute. Let's see if we can, there we go. Yeah, it just, it up and deleted that page. Well, okay, well, I did. All right, well, we're going to go then with these questions, and then we're going to go into the Q&A and the sharing part of it. What is your most impactful takeaway from this chapter? And we can, you can chime right in and answer that if you wish. Anybody?
Bueller.
Well, we have everybody on mute, so if you raise your hand by putting your hand down at the bottom, below where the buttons are, we can go ahead and bring you in.
I know one of the things for me, Dana, and again, thank you so much for going through this with us and putting so much thought in it. I just think it was really interesting that a lot of times during this chapter, they talk about, Napoleon Hill, got these interviews with the most influential people of the times. And it's interesting that each and every one of them, including myself, goes through this really dark time in their life, and sometimes more than one. And so, mine, of course, was, thinking I could stop a van from coming off a hoist while it was in the air. And now the next thing I know, I'm in an emergency room. And the next thing I know, there's a guy with authority called a doctor saying that I'm never going to be an auto mechanic again. And so that's when all of a sudden I look at that point in my life, feeling sorry for myself for over 9 months, and no identity. What am I going to do? I'm not smart enough, blah, 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 until you just finally give up and ask for help. And then all of a sudden I get exposed to a whole different way of living. And for me, it was like I didn't want to admit to myself that I had a part of me that wanted to do and help a lot of other people. But as a person working on cars, I really didn't have an outlet for that. You know what I mean? It was a job. You just do what you're told. And a lot of times you were being told to do what you knew wasn't right to do. And so I didn't realize that I had lost my passion for being a mechanic, but I could connect the dots after the fact. So just like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or a lot of people that you see, having Steve Jobs think the best thing that he could do is bring in a more mature, experienced CEO to help Apple get to the next level. And that guy set him up and fired him from his own company. And that's when he got away from trying to run a company and then went back to the creative state of things that he wanted to create now that Apple's no longer there. And of course, putting together 3 companies that would make enough money to buy the stock that was going to pennies in Apple, and then showing up one day in the boardroom as the majority owner. And then being able to fire the CEO that fired him and step back in. And sometimes people don't like going through struggles, but I tell people all the time, if you feel you're going through a struggle right now, that's your dark time to look for a different way to live your life. Not to continue to struggle and double and triple down on stuff that you did to get you in trouble, to get you in the struggle. So when people tell me, I'm really struggling, I'm going, yeah, God's trying to get your attention. When are you going to let go and let God and just really, really do that? And so the only other thing that I really wrote down here is when I realized that prayer was time that I spent in normal conversation talking to the Creator and being very, very grateful for everything that I had. When it was no longer me being in a structured prayer that I got from organized religion and just going through the repetition of doing the same kind of stuff all over again, and always being in a place where I was basically bartering with God that if he would take care of this stuff, that I would do other stuff, that of course that I was going to let down that part of the bargain. And so I noticed that Napoleon Hill said when he really started praying more about just being extremely grateful for everything that he has, that brings back sort of a universal law that when you're grateful for what you have, you get more. If you're not grateful for what you have, then why give you more? You're going to be ungrateful for that as well. So,
Yeah. Well, that's good, Robert, because that was a powerful analysis of what he is trying to convey. He should have consulted you on that.
well, I can tell you without ever heard about this book, but going through the book, I hope that some of you are getting some aha moments like I am of going, I've heard that. I'm glad it's brought back to my attention. I really need, because, really, really to me, faith, the best example that I've heard about faith, Dana, is if all of a sudden someone gave you a map. That's why I use that. Melody says, GPS to success. It's like if someone gave you a map or you discovered a map of where the gold is, right? That can be extremely, extremely exciting. But just like in Raiders of the Lost Ark or any one of those movies, now that you got a great idea of where the treasure is, you got to get off your ass. So you could manifest it, get the treasure map, Have the imagination of all the things you're going to do, like winning the lottery. When I win the lottery, this is all the people I'm going to help, blah, 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 blah. But you still got to get off your ass and you got to go down to the store and get the ticket. And so a lot of people will understand, like I did, 39 years ago when someone shared with me, can you imagine having 30,000 people responsible for your income? Robert, do you understand that I'm just making a small dollar amount off each and every one of them? And it hit me like I'm telling you now, wow, he's making about $2 per person. And once that shifted in my thinking, then I was going, is there enough people on the planet that would be interested in getting healthy or making extra money? My God, that's I just got to find a way to get my message to them. And so, like you said, faith is actually acting as if, but moving in that direction. So if you really truly believe that people could be healthier, then you need to be talking to more people. If you really think that people could have more freedom and money, then how many people did you tell about it? So that's my point. You guys chime in.
We've got a couple of people that want to chime in. A couple of hands went up. Let's see, Bill Shoemaker and Coach Bob. Bill, let's go ahead, open up, and please share. Coach Bob, you're coming right up.
Thank you, Craig and Dana. Robert, how do you follow up with that? Well, what I got out of it was that it's human nature to go through the dark night of the soul in order for you to open up and listen to your other self, or I would say he's talking about God is what he's talking about. And as far as fear is concerned, fear is the devil. So, outwitting the devil, you have to have a solid foundation and have faith, belief in yourself and what you're doing in order to overcome the devil, outwitting the devil. So that's what I got out of it. So,
I
thank
love
you guys.
simplicity, Bill. That was awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So, that's mine.
Thank you.
Bill, thank you very much. Coach Bob, let's go ahead, get you unmuted, and go ahead and please share with us.
Yeah, well, reading through it too, this thing isn't, it seems like it's not dated, right? It's crazy how this was written way back then and it applies now, which I see as amazing. The other thing is, Hill, with all the knowledge he had, he still had issues or he had still had problems going through life. And it was crazy because he interviewed all these people. And, reading through this, it's like, man, he probably had more challenges than I did, going through life. And the one thing I'm just not getting from this is the other self. It seems like there's like double personalities going or something going on there. I just can't grasp onto that portion of it.
Yeah, well, the other self, it gets revealed more and more as you go forward. But just to kind of go off on a tangent here, in the audiobook, they stripped out quite a bit of information. Now, whether they did that to shorten it or my assertion is Sharon Lecter did it to avoid controversy because what she stripped out was the very stuff that kept the book from being published. And it was in there that he really gets more into concepts that help you determine what that other self is. But the question, we're going back into the late 20s and the late 30s when all of this was happening in his life. And at that time, there was the new thought movement that had come about at the turn of the century, and that may have influenced some of his thinking. But what he describes is a connection. Now, in the modern sense, I don't know if you're familiar with a guy named Robert Monroe. Um, he he wrote three books. Let's see, those were Journey Out of the Body, uh, Far Journeys, and The Ultimate Journey. His claim to fame was that he experienced basically a life full of out-of-body experiences where he had communication with energy forms. And it sounds a little weird, but he founded the Monroe Institute and he literally taught people how to do it. So it wasn't like he was lying about it. But what Napoleon Hill is describing here sounds oddly like what he was describing, connecting with energy sources. And in some of the religious institutions, there's something called glossophilia, where they get into a kind of a spiritual trance and they're having a communication through someone else from an energy source through a third party who speaks, right? Well, all of that to say that there's an energy form that has the ability to connect, and your pineal gland is often thought to be the antenna that receives and transmits. I don't know that to be true. But what he's describing is a connection at a very deep psychological level, almost a deep meditation that just, it's not like he was a meditator, but he was, and I'll go off on a tangent here. I think the times, the stress, the worry, the crash in the economy, the problems that he had, but that crash in the economy created a background of intense emotional energy that attracted the energy that he's talking about. And my perception of it is he was selected. You know, we talked about in the last episode, you know, was his life journey, you know, paraphrasing, was an accident or was it, you know, was his encounter with the other self through his doings or was it planned? I think it was planned. And when he started his journey, it was because that energy source, which is the ethereal energy, it's multidimensional, multi-time. It has a sense of what's going to happen and when, and he was an instrument to make that happen. So that's a long-winded way of saying that he has a connection with a source of energy that's, you know, you can call it God, you can call it whatever you wish, but it was a energy being that had his number.
So do you
And
think, does everyone have this, or is this like special to him, or?
well, everyone has it to a degree, I believe.
Yeah.
What lets it in is all the things that he outlined. And as
It's like,
Robert,
yeah, it's like in the greatest miracle in the world, and also and the science of getting rich. If you noticed, there was an exact quote in this chapter out of the science of getting rich. And for people that don't realize it, you know, that book was written 30 years before Think and Grow Rich. So we're still talking about the early 1900s, Bob. You know, that because these people, and you know, we're not talking about the Edisons and the Einsteins and all the people that were pulling in their thoughts the ideas out of this ether. At that time, you can imagine that if you figured out how to do the telephone, if you figured out how to do the light bulb, if you figured out things that no one else could discover, that there was a lot of people, like you even see this in today's politics, is that people want to pin someone down to ask them where they got the info so they can sort of like see that person is doing something wrong or doing right. And you'll notice the geniuses of this era, they would always talk about sixth sense. They would always talk about ether. They would always talk about there's this substance that permeates and penetrates. Now, the reason why is the reason that they were talking about that, and like Dana said in this chapter says, back then, if you tried to associate this unknown entity with God, you'd be burned at the stake. Those were called witches, man. And so, it's like that's why this wasn't printed at the time. Like he said in the first chapter, I mean, the intro, is it's very important to understand that his wife and then his daughter, there's people in his family. And now we find out from Dana right now that what's in the audio book is not in the written book, is that this stuff brings up the ability of a person to go, well, if you're not telling me what it is, then it's not God or Jesus Christ. So then it has to be Satan. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because most people, it's either black or white. You're either giving, so a lot of people, and I try to get them to explain the Holy Spirit, the Trinity. There's the Catholicism way of explaining it, but then there's the biblical way of explaining it, right? That there was something that fell on the disciples that immediately allowed them to speak in different languages so everyone in the audience could understand. Woo, what? You see what I mean? It's like, wait a minute. Are we sure that's from God or is that from something else? And so like the greatest miracle in the world, I know why Dana said this is going to be revealed to us, because stories that make you emotional, Bob, also allows you to never forget it, and also retain it. So my question to you would be, do you believe that Napoleon Hill in his writing, just like Og Mandino or Wallace Wattles, do you believe in the early chapters that they got you guessing and wondering on purpose?
Yeah.
Because guess what you're doing right now? You're going like, I don't even know what this other damn thing is. What is this other self? Can I get it?
Yeah.
Can I get it?
Right. Yeah.
Okay,
Where can I?
That
Yeah.
might make you read the rest of the damn book.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like this curiosity mystery thing going on, where it's like, whoa, have I ever felt that? Have you ever had the other self? See what I mean?
Yeah.
And I love the way they do that. The good writers are going to get you to do exactly what Dana said, is make you ponder. Just make you really go, well, what is this other stuff? Is it available to me? Is there practices that I can do to master the technique to just stay in the other self?
Right.
I don't really like the current self. The current self seems to get me in a lot of doubt and beating myself up and it's a lot of ugly feelings in this other self. I mean, this self I have now, I'd rather just be plugged into that other self. And
Right.
so I hope that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, it totally. Because that's what I was going through the book. I'm thinking, okay, how can I tap into this? Like you mentioned,
Right.
what can I do to possibly get there,
Bob, I know that you were part of a conversation that we had when we were talking about the Disney movie called The Soul.
Right.
Okay. This might help you a little bit and we can move on. There's this place, because you're such into athletics, right? There's this place where you end up on the clips where how did you do that one hand catch?
Right.
And we all know, yes, it's practice, but it's also belief and faith. And then there's this thing called the zone. The place where it seems that you fall into a place that you're not man, right? That you start doing these things that are unhuman. And what's unique about human beings, whether you're a believer or not, is we can see someone in that state, whether they're acting, whether they're singing. And you get to this point where you just go, like watching, Forrest Gump, it doesn't take you long and you don't know who Tom Hanks is.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a part while you're watching that movie is you're going, holy shit, Tom Hanks is a really good actor in this part. You know what I mean? Sort of like Rain Man, you know what I mean? And so that's why they win awards, because it takes people out of their state and actually transforms them into another state. And so that zone thing would be, if you ask somebody, like I love watching fighters, and people that really understand what Dana's teaching us here are when someone can stand up afterwards, even though they just got defeated, and go, that they were just a better man today. And what do they mean by that? They were in the flow, and he wasn't. It's like the punches that he could normally block, he wasn't. The sight, the instincts, because when you have to think, you're really not in faith. See, and you get people in there that do what they do, and all of us have been in that state where we lose a place of time, and everything just seems to be going better than ever, and we get loss of time, and we're just enjoying ourselves. We're in a state of, in my opinion, the other self.
Mhm.
It's just, we wish we could just pull the trigger or pull the switch and go from state to state.
That would be nice.
Dana, I hope I did okay there.
Oh, absolutely. But one thing I want to clarify here is and I'm going to tell you where they kind of whacked out some of the information here, because your
Please.
question, Bob, would be answered, I believe, if you're reading the book.
Yeah.
If you actually have the hard copy, one of the parts that was left out of the audio was the entire chapter 2. And that chapter is an interview with my invisible counselors. Now, what he alludes to in multiple occasions, and the other one is, there was a section in this chapter that we just finished that was deleted, and that had to do with an interview he had with Edison. Now, Edison was dead. So he was having a spiritual connection.
Now I can see why they deleted it.
But, well, it's more than that. Let me just tell you why I think she deleted it. Number one,
Are you talking to dead people?
Yeah. Well, what it boils down to is one of Hill's conclusions comes down to who or what God is or isn't. And that was at absolute counterpoint to the beliefs, traditional beliefs at that point.
Yeah.
So that was taken out of the audio book. It is in the written book. The other was the role of his communication with Edison in the spiritual other self sense. And Edison gave him direction.
Wow, cool.
And now, he goes in there and he says, I can't explain it. He was in flow. He was in a state. But that was taken out of there because it was a non-acceptable practice to be in connection with the spirit world. Like Robert said, you'd be burned at the stake.
Yeah.
And
Well,
the other
you sure couldn't publish any books.
Yeah. And then
Oh my God.
the other part that was deleted out of the audio, which is where most of the answers you're looking for, is the section. It's the chapter called where is it? It's not in the devil yet. It is, there it is. It's the interview with my invisible counselors. That goes on for a long time. And every one of those counselors are spiritual connections. And the other thing that it is, after reading it a few times, it's interesting. It's identity engineering. What Hill was doing, he was trying to change who he was that was creating all these problems in his life to who he needed to be to deliver on what he was instructed to deliver, which was the law of success, to the world who was grieving and in trouble. So his way of doing that was to create this invisible counselors. each one of those people, he ascribed a characteristic to that he knew he needed. And then he would talk to those people and he would put in his mind the characteristic, the personality traits of that person as if they were his own. And he went through all of these counselors in that very way. Well, in that discussion, who God is and isn't pops up a lot.
Yeah.
But what also pops up is what that other self actually was. It was his ability to communicate with the energy sources, the non-mortal, the non-body, if you will, the non-physical energy sources.
The infinite wisdom.
Yeah, it's infinite, and that's what it is.
I
It's
seen
a storehouse of wisdom.
Yeah, I seen Jane post in here, and regardless of your guys' religious beliefs, organized beliefs, is I find it very interesting, and this is just downloading to me right now, so you guys can have some fun with this. Is that wouldn't every one of you agree right now, if you believe in God and you believe in Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit, whatever ones you believe, isn't it an entity that we cannot touch? It's like religious people are just okay that identity is there. It permeates, penetrates everything, right? So the only thing that we don't know, that science wants to say that's not there, or religion says that it's not there, is this: where does your conscious go when you're gone? Right? So, if people believe that you're gone and you're gone forever, including your consciousness, your thoughts, everything, okay. But if there's another thought that people before us, when they die, that their spirit and their consciousness, their wisdom is still alive, never, ever, ever died. So that's why when Albert Einstein had the conversation about saying that nothing's created or destroyed, that messes with people really, really bad. What are you talking about? Well, everything that you need, everything that you want to be, everything that you want to have is already here. You just have to believe that you can access it. And the science of getting rich talks about becoming, a wonderful becoming, that the be, do, and have, that a lot of people have something. They want money. Give me money, give me leads, give me contacts, give me something so then I can do. And then when I do, then I can become. And it's the exact opposite. If you be first, then you're accepting all that identities. You're plugged into the infinite wisdom of all consciousness that's ever been here and ever will be. Now you're tapped into that, counseling with people that were already here. Now you have the answers, and because you're becoming, you can have and do anything you want. So sometimes when you guys know that I go through all this personal development stuff, sometimes in moments like this, you can see that I actually studied it. And so Albert Einstein, this is what cracks me up and really makes me go, right? I love awesome, is to think that scientists today are now still starting to prove that Albert Einstein was right and stuff that he talked about years ago. See, so Albert Einstein could be this other self to plug into the ether, the unlimited wisdom. I said that out loud. It's like, plug into that. And then he would come up with a concept that he knew that he couldn't prove and didn't know if anyone could prove it. Isn't that crazy? And then later on in life, like in the last 5, 6 years, they're like, wow, Albert Einstein talked about if it was possible to split an atom and take two parts in different places in the world and spin one, would the other one spin at the same speed and direction? And the answer to that is yes, it does. But no one could prove it until they could prove it. And now they get to go back and go, oh, this was one of the hallucinations that Albert Einstein was in when he wrote it in a paper. Go ahead, Dana.
Well, I was going to say the question of where you go. Uh, again, this is just Edison's opinion communicated to Hill, but on page 58 of the book is where that discussion starts. And like I say, it wasn't in this chapter. It's actually part of the interview with my invisible counselors that was deleted in the audiobook. But
Dana, what do you think about as we go through this on the audio side? Because I know that you prepared for that. Was it your thought that maybe when we're done with it, that you were going to bring in this other stuff?
Well, yeah, I was going to do that, but I think and honestly, here's the epiphany I had. I've read the book and I listened to it in the truck while I'm going down the road, and you get to thinking about other things. But it was just recently that I all of a sudden noticed that, whoa, you skipped something.
Yeah.
And in one case, they took a paragraph that was way the heck and gone at the end of one of the chapters and brought it forward. So, yeah, when we're all done, I think we'll summarize it. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll go back and cover it. But just to cover this one thing, and then we probably ought to bail out here.
Okay. Please.
In his interview with Edison alone, okay, he goes in and he talks about where you go when you die, what parts of you. And now it's abstract, okay? At that point in his life, he was abstracting, but I think he may not be so far off. And there's a message that is inherently buried inside of that. And it is how you live your life is really important. Your thoughts, your beliefs, how you treat others, your state of calmness, it's like really important. And if you go in and read that part of the book, just my interview with the invisible counselors, start on page 58, the Edison interview. It's just Edison alone at that point. It's where those questions are answered in Napoleon Hill's words as received from Edison.
Nice.
Edison was dead, right? So.
I do have one other question that Melody has posed. She says, isn't the other self intentional and the regular self kind of an autopilot?
No, it isn't. The intention, if it's coming from any place, is okay. That's the ethereal part. That may be the intention of the other side, but it's not autopilot. The individual has to execute on the subtle directions that are given. It's up to you to figure out what you have just been told and what you need to do. Now, in Hill's dialogue here, I mean, Edison and the other people on his counseling board, they're just kind of giving him the recipe, but they're not really. What they're saying is, look, this is kind of what you need to do, but it's up to you to figure out how to do it. So it's not autopilot. If it were autopilot, everybody would be a raving success. Yeah. But in this case, as he says in the book, you can get the download, but it's up to you to figure out how to make it happen. The other self can tell you or give you the feeling or the insight, but you got to listen, put the pieces together, connect the dots, and then take the action. You will be told as you move along in various ways that you're on the right track, but it's not autopilot. You don't have a program, and that's the real tough part here. And for any of us, I think all of us is, you got to come to grips with who you are and who you need to be to bring gifts to the other side when you get there. And those gifts are the growth of your soul, the growth of the parts, what they're going to call the little chunks of energy, little elements of energy that are screaming around inside your mind and your body. And when you leave, they all go with you. And if they're all in harmony, they stay together. If not, poof,
Wow.
they get scattered to the winds. Now that's his assertion. I mean, but
That's
think
deep.
about it. You know, he's getting this stuff. He's getting this stuff from outside of himself.
Right.
And so you go read that section. That entire section was left out of the audiobook, probably because it's long, but I think more because it was controversial, because it really messes with the minds of some folks. Many
Yeah,
folks.
there's still groups of people that are, that just think it's anti-religion for Think and Grow Rich, Law of Attraction,
Yeah.
yeah, the greatest miracle in the world. There's so many people that were in a different thought pattern back then. And, like we just discussed, we don't have to go into it further. If people actually were able to explain where they got their genius from, they would be anti-religion. Yeah. So it's like, I'm not going to buy any inventions from this guy because he got them from the devil.
There you go.
Well, thank you, Dana. Thank you,
Yeah,
everybody.
well,
Give
thank
Dana
you.
a
You're
hand.
welcome. My pleasure.
That was awesome. That was awesome.
All right. Wow. What a great session today. And thank you very, very much. Dana, there is another response here from Melody. No, I mean, without being other self by choice, do most live on autopilot?
Oh,
I think
well,
that
okay.
really quickly, ladies and gentlemen, let's go, because that'll, I think, wrap it up right there.
Yeah, we'll wrap it up. Just let me answer that one question. That comes later in the book. When they get into the interview with the devil, that question is answered.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So stay tuned.
Love and appreciate you guys so much.
See ya.
What an incredible session, ladies and gentlemen. Chapter 1B. And don't forget, next Wednesday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, we're going to go ahead and move on to Chapter 2. And Dana, bless you, my friend. Thank you so much for being our guide here on Outwitting the Devil. Robert, Terry, thank you. Shouts to Bill Shoemaker, Coach Bob, Melody Ryba, Jane Reed for participating, and of course to Matt Hollis for being our executive producer. And thank you for joining us on our very special series of Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, and featuring our scholar-in-chief, I'll call him that tonight as we do this, Dana Scranton. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, please be good to yourselves. Be cash. Bye-bye. Before I open up for everyone to say goodbye, just a reminder that there are some links that we've shared in the chat. Go ahead and click the 3 dots in the meeting chat and then click on Save Chat. It will download as we conclude here on our Outwitting the Devil. So let's go ahead and unmute so we can all say so long and have a fantastic Wednesday, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
See ya. Thanks, Dana,
Appreciate that.
Robert, Terry.
Fabulous.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dana.
Take care.
Dana,
Great job.
Robert, Terry. Thank you, Craig.